Hello and welcome to the Playmakers, the program where we bring to you the newsmakers from the world of Indian sports. My name is Rahul Kargal and you're watching The Bridge live. Last week, the Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Act 2025 was passed in the Parliament, banning real money online games and associated advertisements and financial transactions while signaling a strategic pivot towards esports and social gaming. It's a sweeping reform that seeks to balance citizen protection with industry growth. Today, we're delighted to be in conversation with Vishal Gondal, a trailblazer who's played a foundational role in India's gaming ecosystem. He is also the founder and CEO of GOQii. Vishal, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Vishal, straight off the bat, what was your first reaction when the bill was passed? Did you actually see it coming?
I was overjoyed and I was not able to believe that this has happened uh, because even though I've been championing the cause uh, for RMG to be uh, regulated or banned, I think at the pace which it happened and the clarity at which the government came up with the regulations and the way they ring fenced the entire problem was remarkable. I think one other aspect which was very exciting for me personally is the government recognizing that there are what they call online social games, which is really essentially video games, and esports, which needs to be developed. Currently, these industries, which is the real gaming industry and the esports industry, was completely operating under the dark shadow of RMG. And because of that, uh, there was lack of funding, lack of resources, lack of support, and many things around it. So finally, this bill clears the way for India to finally shine in the gaming industry worldwide.
Right, it's interesting because the government moved at a rapid pace, right? And they made public a set of reports, right? Citing the reason as to why they did this, right? They stated that Indians were, every year they were losing roughly 15,000 crores due to real money gaming, right? There was also evidence put up saying that a certain Chinese app was defrauding Indian users to the context of up to 400 crore. What is your take on all of these reports that the government cited?
I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, very frankly. I think this problem is much more bigger. Let's just go to the history of this, right? Real money game. It assumed that there were some fake money games and they just converted these fake money to real money. This is not a term used anywhere in the world. It was almost invented in India. In the rest of the world, these games are considered gambling or wagering. And there are very clear regulations around it. There are audits conducted on these things. There are absolute fair play laws around it, and largely there is an understanding in pretty much all over the world that these games are either banned totally in places like China, Singapore, Middle East, etc., Japan, Korea, or they are regulated like the gambling industry where licenses are given and rules are set up. Uh, in India, there was a very big effort, and to a large degree, they were successful in obfuscating and presenting that these were nothing but games of skills, and all these people were just doing it for the fun of losing money. And in fact, some of these companies even compared this to Olympic sports. And if you remember, they actually had ads featuring Indian Olympic athletes in those ads, trying to depict that, by playing rummy or teen patti, you're becoming an Olympic champion in gambling.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting, perspective that you're sharing. You're delighted, obviously, that there's regulation now, and much like how it is in several other countries overseas. But it almost felt as if when government, introduced the bill, and of course it's become an act now, they had to call out some of these so-called vices, so to speak, right? I mean, they even had a crack at, the gaming, establishment business and the corporation, so to speak. Almost, there was one instant there, they said, gaming companies, they said, were involved in GST evasion, Vishal, to the extent of 30,000 crore. It was almost as if they had to really, establish a cause.
No, I mean, it's very simple, right? The minute you take money from someone, you are not a bank to call it a deposit. And normally if you give money to, in any wallet, for example, unless it's a bank, you cannot store the money. The minute you load a money in the wallet, GST is paid on it. And this is happening in any other industry. Try paying an electricity bill, or try even doing a top up on your mobile phone. When you top up your mobile phone and add money to it, the GST is deducted. But somehow these companies wanted to talk about that, how they are only looking at GST on their winnings, and they were trying to remove the portion of the so-called wagering out of it. So like I said, right, there was a lot of smokes and mirrors, and there was a lot of obfuscation, and there's a lot of confusion. And to compound, each state was having its own playbook on how to deal with this. And the most funny part, and I'm not kidding you, this is it's 2025, and the case which made this possible is a Supreme Court judgment of 1867, where somebody said that rummy is a game of skill. So the entire argument that all these are game of skills goes back to 1800s, when the British were ruling us. And they had somehow considered, when there was no internet, I don't know if there was any kind of even electricity fully available here, but that was the ruling on the basis of which this entire industry was standing. So it was already on a very, very weak wicket.
That's right. And, once, of course, the bill was passed, right, and once the presidential assent was made available, right, pretty much, all the big players in the industry complied almost immediately, right? It was just as swift as the bill was passed across both the houses in the parliament, right? Your thoughts on how quickly the industry complied.
No, because the law was very clear, right? What they were doing was considered illegal. So, I mean, they had no option but to comply. But I must say that, part of the problem over here was that this was becoming a big issue at the society level, at the ground level. I think the reason our government had to act on this was this was causing many suicides. This was causing a lot of broken families. People were getting into debt. And this was largely happening in smaller cities and towns. So there was a huge negative impact on society. So, and the same impact, everybody was seeing, but somehow it was making no impact. And we could see these companies getting advertising with bigger and bigger movie stars, bigger sports stars, you name it. And every second TV ad or online ad was from these companies. So I think greed had really gone to another level here, where it's almost like we say that almost the entire country was kind of engulfed into this. And I think finally the government has decided to stop this. Of course, they could have taken the route of regulating, which also I would have been completely fine with. But it was important to call a spade, and not treat this as some kind of gaming, real money, fun gaming. It is a sin, treat it like a sin, and then the government can decide whether they want to have it, not have it. That's a decision of the elected representatives of the country. My problem essentially was that, imagine alcohol being sold to kids, saying that this is fermented juice, it's even good for your health. Or cigarettes being sold as these are organic leaves, which are healthy and as organic as you can be. So First of all, the product is something which is harmful, but it was being presented as something which is great, and it is esports and we are going to create world champions out of it, which was my problem. So I said call it gambling, and put a proper KYC ruling, proper rules of engagement, and let kids not be able to have access to it, and then they can decide what they want. As adults, people can take the decision. So of course, the government has gone to the other extreme of totally banning it, which is also welcome, because I would not want my kids to be exposed to these kind of games for sure.
Right, and now that the government has indeed gone to the other extreme, like you mentioned, and banning it entirely, there's an entire, you know, house of cards that has literally crumbled, right? The industry now has to pivot, right? The gaming market was huge, right? It was projected to grow at a CAGR of
So I want to
28%.
correct it, right? There was no gaming market. There was no GDP growth. Essentially, money from losers was going to the winners or the house. So let's be very clear. When they say 20,000 crore market, basically this is 20,000 crore money which I was losing in this. There was no GDP. See, normally when you buy a mobile phone, you produce it, and there's a cost of production, there is employment, there is value created in the chain. In this case, when you say 20,000 crores, that's essentially the amount of money which was in the pot. That was not value being created.
Fascinating insights straight away, right? Also, the real money gaming industry aficionados, so to speak, right? They argue by saying that there are over 2 lakh jobs that are being threatened across 400 odd companies
So,
right
so
now.
where are
So
these people? Where are these people? Where are these people? If these people are affected, I'm not seeing any petitions. I'm not seeing any protests. I'm not seeing anyone visibly coming and saying, even forget two lakh, even 2,000 people have not come together to say this has happened. Normally, if something happens which is bad for the society, we have seen there are protests. When the farmers bill was introduced, we know there was so much protest, and from everywhere, and farmers were on the street, people were doing hunger strikes. If there were this was so good, where are the people, where are the people on the street saying that we want to play these games? So really, very frankly, except a few lawyers and paid PR representatives, I don't see anybody else coming and saying that this is good and this should be continuing. So that is the fundamental problem right now, that from a society perspective, uh, I don't know who is really complaining.
so a lot of these companies who were involved in real money gaming, Vishal, right now, how do they pivot? While most of them are, a lot of these are publicly listed companies. So how do they get the revenue engines
Actually,
going now?
I think there was only one publicly listed company, Nazara, and luckily for them, they had a small part of their business being exposed, which was publicly disclosed. Outside of that, most of them were private companies, and very frankly, I know the CEOs of a lot of these companies, and all I can say is that they are all smart entrepreneurs, and now that the rules are set, they are going to pivot, and I wish them best of luck to pivot and create a much bigger business. I think right now, I would say that, personally, again, this is my personal view, that the government led them or misled them, because there was this whole talk that this is getting regulated, there was GST charged, and there was going to be 40% GST. So I think the signals which was given by the government no way indicated that the ban is coming so soon. So I think what happened is that a lot of these people forget about slowing down. They were doubling or tripling down in their businesses, which anybody would do, right? If they think that this is an opportunity. And what happened is, and which is what surprised everybody, because nobody was expecting this. So for a second, let's forget about whether it is good or bad. But I think everybody in the industry, as well as outside the industry, were blindsided. Um, but like I said, finally it was done, I think, in national interest and the interest of our youth.
That's right. And you mentioned that, the founders and CEOs of a lot of these companies really well. You also call them really smart entrepreneurs. So, help us look into the future just a tad bit over the next 6 months or 12 months. How do you see all of these smart entrepreneurs pivoting in the industry, Vishal?
So I don't know the specifics of what they are doing, but I think I can tell you what the government wants you to do, right? They're saying that the largest opportunity in gaming, 300 billion, is in the video game sector, which again they're calling online social games, which I think needs to possibly go more in tune with what the world calls it. Uh, the largest games company, Tencent from China, is not making real money games. They are building entertainment games. These are games which you pay money because you are having fun. It's not because you are expecting to make 1 crore or 10 crores out of it. It is just like when you go to a movie theater, you're buying a ticket not expecting that you're going to get 10 times the money out from the movie. You are basically doing it because you enjoy it. It's something you want to do for fun and entertainment. So I think that's where the government wants you to go. So they're saying build games. You can very well have games without real money. Let's put it that way, with just fun as the element. And now when you have to make the games fun, you need to have storylines, you need to have characters, you need to have technology, immersive graphics, 3D. And I'm sure people listening to this have played games like Counter Strike or Valorant or PUBG or Free Fire, or our game Fauji, and more games coming up. So now the focus is that, hey, if you have the skills, the bigger opportunity in the world is the video game sector, and invest in that. I think the easy money was coming from real money gaming because the games in itself were not very complicated. It was really the what was generating the big money was the amount of money I was betting. So for the same game, somebody was betting 10,000, somebody was betting 10 lakhs. So that's how you made more money. While in a normal video game, it's not like you can pay 10 lakhs for if you like the game more.
Yeah, and given that the Bill champions esports and like they call it social gaming, right? Probably now the time is ripe for a lot of IPs around the space, isn't it? Brand new, so-called made in India IPs.
And that is the reality of the entertainment industry. If you see movies, Indian movies do well in India, Kannada movies do well in Kannada, and regional and local content always wins. Similarly, let's take YouTube or let's take even Instagram. Our local influencers have more views than international influencers. The only exception to this rule currently is the gaming industry, where the top 50 games on the Google Store and the Apple Store are largely Chinese or foreign games. And these games are almost taking $800 million in revenue. And there is not even one game made in India in the top list, because not that many games were created in the last 6 7 years. So just like any other entertainment business, you need throughput. You need, like, after 1,000 movies are made, you get one or two or five blockbusters. You don't expect every movie created to become a blockbuster. Similarly, we need a very high throughput now of good quality gaming titles, and of course some of them will win, some of them may lose, and some of them will become global hits. But for that, the we needed the quantity and the quality both to come in, and for that we needed the investment.
Right, and I think what you're alluding to is now that the bill clarifies all of this, it's basically thrown the carpet open to all the developers, game developers, and essentially telling them, you go ahead and innovate now. We are championing your cause.
No, and I think it's now equally our responsibility. I saw Minister Vaishnav ji saying that the 20,000 crore lost will be gained by the other two parts of the business. So yeah, we have a lot of responsibility to do that. But we have to understand the real gaming sector raised almost $2 billion or probably more in investments across all these companies for them to generate this kind of revenue. Compared to that, the video game sector has not even done $50 million in funding, just to give you a apples to apple. And that to $50 million, I'm being very very optimistic. I think it numbers might be even lower. So the entire game IP industry in India so far, I think, in my guess, would not be more than 30 $40 million, while And again, I'm giving you a lower estimate in real money gaming. It's more like $2 billion. So that is the difference in investment.
So what you're essentially alluding to is now is the next big influx of funding could well happen in the esports slash gaming sector in India.
I think we are hoping so. I think investors now would see this, right? Because right now they were seeing easy money and very good returns. So I mean, these businesses were highly profitable because right, in a business like this where you're it's not as much a tech play, it's a lot more around managing players and stuff like that. Um, so I think now with this, I think the government needs to create some kind of framework to also encourage investment in this sector, and only then we can grow.
Sure, and I'm sure there are a lot of youngsters watching this particular interaction. Vishal, they look up to you, right? Early stage entrepreneurs as well. You know, what is your advice for all of them in keeping with everything that's happened over the
I think
past year?
one big thing which has changed in the world of gaming is that you no longer need a lot of money to create AAA titles. Previously, to create high quality gaming titles, you needed high end art and graphics and level design. And a lot of times, smaller developers could not do that. So while their games were good, they were not as polished or as good looking. Now with AI, that has changed. So I think suddenly you could be equal to an EA, Electronic Arts, or equal to an Activision from a game quality perspective, because the AI tools is becoming an equalizer. So I think this is a very unique opportunity for us as India, because we did not have an industry. So if we can adopt AI in our production pipeline, I see that we would be able to quickly create very, very high quality games, and quickly take this to market. So I think we have an advantage from the AI side. The second advantage which we have in India is a huge player base. India has so many gamers, and a lot of times getting to the gamers itself is a challenge. Today there is hardly any games from India, so if you create a half decent game, you can get very good adoption. And now, as you know, we've set up something called the Indian Game Developers and Publishers Association, where we are going to be working to promote IP based games and work with the government and various stakeholders to make sure that the number of titles produced from India, the number of IPs produced, are the number increases both in quality and quantity.
That's right. I think the points that you're making absolutely makes 100% sense. And if I were to ask you a final question, Vishal, if there was anything at all that you would change in the act, what would that be?
I mean, I don't think so. There's one thing to be changed in the act. I think this is a framework which has to be developed together. So I think this is a starting point, and I think the government is going to get a regulator in, and I think it's about building from here. This is not a this is act and that's it. I don't think so. It's positioned in that way. I think there is going to be a lot of inputs coming in from the industry. So all I would say is that it is not going to change. It's going to adopt and evolve, and take industry inputs. So maybe in 5 years time this might be totally different than what it was today, because we have to respond to what AI is going to do. We have to respond to what new platforms, like we're talking about meta glasses, VR. So I think platforms are changing. There are so many things happening in the world of technology, and gaming, by the way, has always been on the bleeding edge. Whatever happens in tech is first adopted in gaming, the world of gaming, before it gets adopted in mass market. So gaming actually becomes a showcase. And in fact, Nvidia, if you see its roots, are also in the world of computer games, and that's where Nvidia perfected the GPU, which eventually is now being used by the entire world for AI. So we have to remember that, like Lord Krishna also said, the entire world is a game and this is all Maya. And now we have to be making these games, but making sure that we do good karma with this at the same time.
Yeah, fascinating insights, Vishal. So, in effect, you're saying that the act is not a limiting factor, but it's quite simply opened the doors for innovation.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for having me on the show.
Fantastic. Vishal, thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Vishal Gondal, the founder and CEO of GOQii, sharing his insights on the promotion and regulation of Online Gaming Act 2025 that was passed last week. Unfortunately, that's all that we have time for. Thank you very much for joining this broadcast. My name is Rahul Karga. Until next time, goodbye.